Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slashfilmcast. My name is David Chen, and with me are...
Devindra Hardwar.
And Jeff Kanata.
Welcome to the show, everyone. What we're going to do here on today's podcast is discuss some what we've been watching. We got a Slash Film Court later on where we're going to adjudicate a movie-related dilemma, a series of movie-related dilemmas, actually, and then conclude with an in-depth review. This week we'll be reviewing Overlord, the new Bad Robot production directed by Julius Avery. Looking forward to talking about this movie with you guys. We had our choice of movies to review for this weekend, and Overlord, Girl in the Spider's Web, and also The Grinch all came out. And
it was tough. It was tough there. The Grinch was really holding out. Yeah.
Well, the Grinch actually dominated the box office, and Overlord and Girl in the Spider's Web, unfortunately, basically kind of the movies that we want, in the theater, right? Like adult dramas, mid-budget, right? Both are around $40 million budget. Both of those movies did really badly. So foretells a bleak future for people who are into non-superhero films or children's movies at the box office.
It's like some creature snuck into their house at night and stole everything that they cared about.
Nicely done, Jeff.
Speaking
of nicely done, this is the first time in ever, I think, that prior to this podcast, I had to text one of the co-hosts and say, hey, Jeff, don't worry about joining us on the podcast if your house is being evacuated. Or if your city is being evacuated. Jeff,
this is life in 2018.
Yeah, what is going on, Jeff? You're in imminent, or are you in imminent danger? What's going on over there?
I am danger adjacent.
You're danger adjacent.
Yeah, and I will probably talk of it flippantly, but that is only to mask the abject terror that is actually in my heart. I've never been scared of anything like I'm scared of the last couple of days. I live in the San Fernando Valley, and I'm sure you guys have heard about the massive wildfires that are all over the state of California. It's terrible in Northern California. It's terrible here in Southern California, Malibu. Many, many, many homes and lives have been lost. Malibu is connected to the San Fernando Valley via a series of canyons. Those canyons are all burning, and it is encroaching closer and closer to where I live. And in fact, 2 days ago is when it broke out. We were very, very scared that day. I literally did the thing that you talk about as like a thought experiment at dinner parties. You know, that thing where somebody says, if you could only save one thing from your house, what would it be? I lived that. We got a go bag packed, and we decided what things in our house we would take with us if we had to leave. And I went back and found like old journals from college that are irreplaceable and some photos that I don't have digitally, and literally went back and took inventory of everything I own and what I would not want to see perish, and took video of my house and took lots of pictures for eventual potential insurance claims, and I literally looked around my house and thought of everything being gone. Which is the reality for a lot of people. So I'm certainly not in the worst of it. People are already living that. But then the day after that, the winds subsided. We have Santa Ana winds here in Southern California that are very gusty and are really the cause of this tragedy, that the fire would not have spread like it has without those winds. But we had those died down, and my family and I, it was very smoky, and I have young children, a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and so we were worried about the air quality, and then we went down. We decided to just take the day and drive down to Long Beach to get as far away from it as we could. And we just went down to the aquarium, and we have season passes to the aquarium. We went down to the aquarium and just kind of took the day and tried to get our mind off of it, and actually was doing pretty good. And then today the winds kicked back up. They are expected to last for the next 3 days. And even today we were all right. The air quality wasn't so bad. The wind was kind of clearing that out a little bit, and we were feeling good. And then we're recording here about 7 p.m. my time. At 5 p.m. my time, we got word that the town adjacent to mine, Calabasas, a town of 23,000, has just been mandatory evacuated. So that's less than 2 miles from where I live, that town. So that entire town, 23,000 people, have been ordered to evacuate. So I've never been as scared of anything as I am scared of this. This is it's a terrifying time, and I'm scared for my family, but people say stay safe, and I appreciate it. I've gotten lots of wonderful messages from people saying stay safe. I intend to, but I don't mean this to sound shallow, but I also don't want all of my worldly possessions to go away.
Right.
I don't think that's
that'd be nice.
shallow. I don't think that's a shallow sentiment, Jeff.
Yeah. We literally bought this house 2 years ago. So my life savings is in this house, and we have insurance. But the idea of buying our first home and living there 2 years and then it burning to the ground is a pretty horrific thought. So. As I said, more people are dealing with the actual reality of that. I'm just dealing with the potential of that, and maybe this will all be just a source of anxiety and nothing more for me. And if so, I will be very grateful. But it's a trying time, to say the least. It's pretty insane.
Well, Jeff, you have a bunch of you have thousands of listeners right now, and of course us here on the podcast, rooting for you and your family and hoping that you guys do stay safe and that you end up in a good situation. And of course, if there's anything that people can do, you are welcome to use this channel as a way of getting the word out.
Thanks. Again, I don't want this to sound like a woe is me. Like I said, we are in the lucky category right now, and I hope to stay there. And there are ways that you can help lots of people who aren't me right now. There's some perverse sentiment going around the internet that because a lot of the people affected are in Malibu, that it's only millionaires and famous people who have been affected and therefore not worthy of our compassion. And I would like to disavow people of that notion right now. This is a tragedy that has affected a wide range of people of all income levels, and they deserve not only your compassion but any support you could give. But also I want to say that I appreciate you asking about it and letting me talk about it. I certainly don't mean to bring down the room, but it's also my intention to have a good time tonight as we talk about movies, because first of all, that's one of the things I love most about my life is that I get to do this, and second of all, it's a lovely escape from that sense of foreboding dread to be able to have fun and talk to my friends and and enjoy the hobby that I like so much.
It really has been a terrible last few weeks. I mean, putting aside the results of the midterm elections, just some terrible things have been happening in the world, and we really don't talk about it that much in the podcast. I think mostly just out of if we did, I just wouldn't be able to do the podcast.
That would be the show.
That would be the show. It'd be just 99% that, because it is so upsetting everything that's going on right now. I feel like I've aged 10 years in the last 2 years.
Yeah,
I mean, I really do.
We're just the podcast is basically just continuing out of sheer momentum and adrenaline. Essentially, it's just it's happening every week. There's a deadline every week. We got ads we got to do, and so it's we're just doing it because we still enjoy it. It's just it's very difficult.
It's a nice escape.
It's both difficult and also it's both difficult and a nice escape to have this time to talk about stuff that's not everything that's dominating the headline. So appreciate you sharing it, Jeff, and bringing attention to what the reality is for a lot of people. And of course, we're all thinking about you and wishing you well.
Thanks.
So to smoothly transition into what we've been watching, I'm going to actually, I don't know if you guys saw the Saturday Night Live had a sketch called The Potties, right?
Oh yeah.
So and it was a fictional podcast award. And one of the awards that was awarded to The Potties was most rough transition into an ad. Which I it was hilarious, but it's also very upsetting that the Slashfilmcast was not nominated for many of Jeff's strained segues.
What? I think that I think we'd have to be nominated for the opposite award, the inverse of that award, the most brilliant transition into an ad.
I think it is. It is interesting that we have many true crime podcasts that are sponsored by seemingly like more ephemeral things, like
just doesn't fit the tone of the show.
Yeah, like I can't name. I'm not going to name any companies, but it's just like and that's why like she was covered in blood when they found her the next day. And you know what else is covered in things like last night's chicken, risotto. It's just like
makes me think of marinara.
it's just such an odd, because theoretically there are companies out there that are more serious. Like, are you looking for a loved one? Like, here's a service that helps you do. But it's always like the most kind of lighthearted.
It's funny.
Lighthearted companies that are sponsoring.
One of my favorite shows right now is the Preparara's podcast.
Yes.
And
that's a good
he is he's so smart and erudite, and then he rolls into these ads, and I'm like, man, I don't know how to feel about this, but I like hearing him tell me these ads, so I want this to keep going. Yes.
I was watching Saturday Night Live last night, and I was tickled that podcast sort of had arrived on as a big enough medium to be skewered like that, that enough people got the gag, right? But there is also a part of me as an old podcaster who bristles at this notion that like podcasting was invented by Mark Maron, that like it didn't exist before 2010. As somebody that made my living doing it 3 years before that, get off my lawn a little bit, but
it was I sometimes have to remember that they write these things within a week, so they can't always be as good as we'd want, because there were some easy shots and it felt like I felt like that could have been funnier, but I did laugh at Bros Saving Politics, because that's why I can't listen to that show, basically. So yeah, perfect.
Also, I'm just gonna put this out there, like I think I do a better Michael Barbaro impression than Leah Schreiber.
I know. I was like, oh, they introduced Michael Barbaro. I was like, in my car every morning, I do a Michael Barbaro impression. This is going to be great. And then it's like he never listened.
All right, Jeff. So first of all, Michael, for those who don't know, Michael Barbaro hosts a podcast for the New York Times called The Daily, which is, in my opinion, an excellent podcast. It has become...
It's a miraculous podcast.
Yes, it is like part of my daily rotation, right?
Things happen in the middle of the night, and then the next morning they have a fully produced, exquisitely designed podcast delving deep into that topic. And it's like, how do they just not sleep? Does Michael Barbaro just have the hours of 6 p.m. to 4 a.m.? Is that his work day?
What's amazing about the podcast is that he is interviewing the people who are actually making the news. So I remember when the Brett Kavanaugh stuff was going on, there's that woman that screamed at Jeff Flake in the elevator. And then the next day they're interviewing that woman, that clip that went viral. And so it's a really amazing show.
The one on the midterms just the other day, it was like he was bothering people at the New York Times as they were trying to do their work.
So Jeff Kanata, I think we know where this conversation's heading, which is you and I are going to have to do a Michael Barbaro off right now.
Okay.
And let's hear your Michael Barbaro impression.
All right, ready?
Yep.
I'm Michael Barbaro, and this is The Daily.
I don't know.
On today's Daily,
I'm hearing the music.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm interrupting. I thought you were done. Go ahead. Start over again. Go ahead.
Maybe the reason you thought I was done is because everything I say takes an hour.
So dramatic. It's a good lead up into the show.
Okay. Here we go. It's my turn, Jeff. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. From the New York Times, I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily. Today on the Slashfilmcast, a review of The Girl in the Spider's Web, which is the newest Sony entry into the Dragon Tattoo franchise.
Pretty good.
Wow. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I'll have to leave it to our listeners to decide who won the Barbaroff.
The Barbaroff,
that was pretty good. Pretty good.
All right. Well, let's get into it then, shall we? So let's talk about what we've been watching this week. I had a chance to go see The Girl in the... Here's the full title. The Girl in the Spider's Web, A New Dragon Tattoo Story, which rolls trippingly off the tongue.
Not confusing at all.
I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb.
I love dragon tattoo stories.
I know. It's my favorite kind of story, Jeff. The dragon tattoo story. Young computer hacker Lisbeth Salander and journalist Michael Blomkvist find themselves caught in a web of spies, cyber criminals, and corrupt government officials. So this movie is theoretically a sequel to the David Fincher film Girl with Dragon Tattoo. It is based off of a book that is not part of the original trilogy of books, though. I think it's like one of the later books that was written by a different author. And it stars Claire Foy as Lisbeth Salander, and also is directed by Fede Alvarez. Now, I'd read a bunch of reviews of this movie before I went to go see it, and all the reviews said that this movie wasn't very good. And I watched video reviews that said the movie wasn't very good. And I really could have done anything with my Saturday
You went
afternoon
anyway. Yeah.
that wasn't going to see this. But you know, guys, sometimes you got to see a movie because you want to support the people who are in the movie. Okay?
You want more Dragon Tattoo stories.
I want more Dragon Tattoo stories.
Claire Foy, she needs more work these days.
Well, I don't know if you're being sarcastic, but I am a big fan of Claire Foy.
I am a big fan, but she's also in everything this year.
She was just in First Man. Yeah, that's right. But no, I'm a big... Okay, here. To wit, gentlemen. I'm a big Claire Foy fan. I'm a big Lakeith Stanfield fan, who's completely wasted in this film. Mm-hmm. I'm a big Sylvia Hoeks? She was one of the villain characters in Blade Runner 2049.
Such a big fan, you know her name.
I know her name. I don't know how to pronounce it, Devindra. I think those are two different things. And of course, Fede Alvarez, he made Don't Breathe, which is one of my favorite films of that year. And so I was just thinking to myself, like, what is it about this movie that would have attracted a director like Fede Alvarez? Don't Breathe, that was a hit. Right, that movie made a decent chunk of change. It was very low budget.
His Evil Dead was pretty good too.
Evil Dead was pretty good, right? So it's like, okay, this guy has some juice now. What is he going to use? Like, what the thing you make after your big hit? I feel like says a lot about a filmmaker. Like, there's got to be something that attracted him to this story, right? That was my thinking going into it. And I could not see it. I could not figure out what it was that attracted into the story. The movie is completely adequate. I think if you were to watch it on TV or cable, you would think, it's completely fine.
Yeah.
I will say it is gorgeously shot. There's some amazing cinematography in this movie, and a few spectacular visuals. Like some of the visuals are great. I mean, the movie, the visuals are better than the film that they are in.
I hear this is like almost James Bond-esque in terms of like the set pieces.
Yes, there is one set piece where she's like riding on ice on a motorcycle. That's very Die Another Day-esque.
That's exactly what you want to make people think of. Yeah.
But there are other James Bond comparisons too, which is like I think the main sort of plot, the MacGuffin, is this device that lets you launch an individual launch nuclear weapons. And the villain in this movie is just ridiculously, like, it's just so ridiculous and over the top. It is very James Bond-esque in terms of what they're trying to do and their motivations. It's very silly.
Is that what they've done with Lisbeth Salander? Because I read the first book, and boy, is it not trying to be James Bond.
Yeah, the other books, I'm very glad they didn't adapt the other two books by the original author, because they get real bad. Like,
well, the first one's not good. The first one's
Yeah.
not good either.
The
they're
second
not
one
good.
involves like a boxer and a huge national conspiracy against Elizabeth Salander. It's really bad. It feels like fan fiction. So they did make those the Swedish versions, right, of the original films. Like, they did do those. I'm glad Fincher didn't touch that garbage, and I'm glad we moved past that at least.
Yeah, well, there was Fincher actually wanted to make the follow-up, and it didn't work out. Of course, Fincher's version of Girl with Dragon Tattoo did okay. It didn't. I think it was a $10 million debut, but it hoofed it all the way to like around $100 million. And that's like quite. That movie has legs, as they say, in industry parlance. $232 million worldwide, $102 million domestically. The problem with that movie is it was 2.5 hours long and it cost $90 million, right? And this movie is 2 hours long and it costs around $40 million. So theoretically, if the movie did just as well, it would be a success. But the problem is it's not going to do just as well, I don't think, because I don't know. It loses.
Yeah.
it has
Nobody
many of the
wants
same,
this.
Well, it has many of the same characteristics of the first one, which is to say, pretty solid performances and great visuals.
No James Bond. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is so much sillier than that Girl with Dragon Tattoo movie that came out in 2011. I think the time has passed for this franchise. You know, I don't think, like you said, no one wants this. I don't think this is a movie franchise that people are like, when are they going to make the next one of those dragon tattoo stories? So it was ultimately a disappointment. But like I said, if you are able to catch it when it comes onto a streaming service on HBO or whatever, I don't think you'll be that disappointed. I think it's like, you know, it's a totally adequate thriller spy movie that has some great visuals and a good performance. So that's Girl with Dragon Tattoo, or Girl in the Spider's Web, a dragon tattoo story.
I think that if you're making an anthology of dragon tattoo stories, I would like to see just stories of why you got that dragon tattoo. I'd be into that.
Yeah,
do that.
Yeah, I mean,
why'd you get that dragon tattoo? A dragon tattoo story.
I think they kind of explain it in this movie. I think. Yeah. So, all right. So, gentlemen, Criterion Collection. It's had some sales recently. You know, every now and then at Criterion.com or at Barnes Noble. There'll be like a 50% off Criterion sale. And
by the way, speaking of Criterion, RIP Filmstruck, we did not mention that.
We didn't mention that. That's right. I wanted to mention, and in many ways, the death of Filmstruck is kind of a vindication for those people who spent thousands of dollars collecting Criterion discs, because you know.
That's
because
funny.
You never know when the digital version of it's going to go away, right?
That's like saying it was good that I bought all those Star Wars action figures and kept them in the package because Toys R Us went bankrupt.
That's right. That's exactly. Thank you, Jeff. That's a good analogy.
Both. Well, I mean, the better analogy is as our podcast friend is pointing out, where are those Michael Bay Criterions, right? You don't have them anymore.
Patrick Willems, right, has pointed out like the Michael Bay Criterion discs have not hit Blu-ray, specifically Armageddon and The Rock, and those were good. Those were good discs. I think I still have those DVDs because I knew that there were no Blu-ray equivalents. So anyway, okay. So I recently went on a binge and bought a ton of Criterion Blu-rays. One of the discs I bought was Grey Gardens, the documentary by the Maysles brothers. Have you guys seen Grey Gardens by any chance?
A while ago.
Yeah, this is an incredible documentary. It's made like 4 decades ago. It's about these two women, the Beals, mother and daughter, who are kind of part of high society, but end up living in this house that becomes increasingly decrepit and unsafe as the film progresses. And it's just a fascinating documentary. I think it's part of a move. According to Wikipedia, it's part of a movement called direct cinema, which burgeoned in the 50s and 60s when cameras were able to be so portable that you could take them and film people in extremely kind of like intimate situations and capture them in their daily lives, right? And kind of remove barriers between cinema and reality. And so the movie is just really a series of mundane scenes between mother and daughter strung together, and they kind of like tell each other stories. They talk, they cross-talk over each other. They repeat stories over and over, often in different contexts. And it's a fascinating and tragic portrait of what has happened to these two people. And so it's obviously decades old, and many of you who are cinephiles have likely seen it and are probably shocked that I didn't see it in its entirety until now. But I thought it was very powerful and very moving, and I'd recommend it for anyone who's interested in kind of the history of documentary and wants to see what the format was during this very specific point in time. The movie also spawned a HBO film in 2007, 2009, I should say, which apparently won multiple awards. So it continues to live on. This is a movie, Grey Gardens, I would say, that has huge cultural impact. And so would strongly recommend you check it out if you have any interest in documentary. So that's Grey Gardens. It's on Criterion. But
I saw it in film school. It was one of those like assigned films in film school. It's that important. Yeah.
I watched the Documentary Now parody of Grey Gardens again recently after having seen the film, and they really don't diverge that much from what the movie is. Like it's just like that. what's in the movie, but slightly exaggerated, and that's how they chose to parody it. So these characters are larger than life and very fascinating, and I'd recommend it. So that's Grey Gardens. That's what I've been watching this week. Devindra Hardawar, what have you been watching?
Oh yeah, quickly, I just want to mention Midnight Diner, Tokyo Stories. You probably have seen this pop up in your Netflix recommendations. This is a Japanese series about a chef who runs a midnight diner, not surprisingly. And, a various array of characters comes in. He makes some food, and we hear their stories. It's a really simple and peaceful little show. I believe it's based on a manga. I just really enjoy it. It's a really nice and relaxing thing to watch. I started watching it as I was feeding my baby at night. So it's a good time to put on a show that's not too loud and easy to follow, even if you can't see everything that's happening. I just really enjoy it. So if you enjoy Japanese food or food related media at all, there's always a central dish, but then it's always around characters and different stories. It kind of reminds me of High Maintenance in that way. So if you like that sort of thing, where you have recurring characters and then new people coming in cool little side stories, it's worth checking out. Just a really nice, peaceful show.
I just Googled it while you were talking about it, Devindra, and it says here on Vice, Midnight Diner Tokyo Stories is a hidden gem on Netflix. Here's the series to watch while you're waiting for new High Maintenance episodes. So,
yeah, there you go. There you go.
So the show is Midnight Diner Tokyo Stories. It's on Netflix right now. Check it out. Jeff Kanata, what have you been watching?
I've also been watching a Netflix series. It's called Bodyguard, and it is a BBC import onto Netflix. Evidently was a massive hit in the UK. I mean, there's 17 million people watched the final episode, which I guess that's the equivalent of 80 million here. It's just a huge percentage of the population. And it is on Netflix now. It stars, the guy who played Rob Stark.
Richard Madden?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And this was a show I had recommended to me by several people. I'm a bit of an Anglophile. I like BBC shows. And my wife and I sat down to watch the first one, and we got immediately hooked. We watched the whole thing in, I think, 3 days, which isn't saying a lot. It's only 6 episodes, hour episodes each. But for us, that's intense. It was a quick pace, and we would stop we'd finish an episode, and we'd turn to each other, and we'd have intense conversations about what we thought was going on. And there's a mystery that is presented, and lots of information. It's a very dense show. I should say what it's about. It is about a politician. Well, I should say it's more about a law enforcement officer who gets promoted because he does something pretty dramatic, gets promoted to be a bodyguard for a political official, and then as a result gets kind of pulled into this crazy plot and intrigue, and doesn't know who to trust, and there's all kinds of craziness that goes on. This is a show that starts at 11 and then goes to 12 and 13 in subsequent episodes. It is crazy. It's intense. It's a show where you never feel safe. Anything can happen. Anybody is fair game in the show. I wouldn't put anything past it. We would have these wonderful conversations, my wife and I, at the end of episodes of what do you think? Oh my God, is that even real? Where are we go? What's going to happen next? Do you think that person's going to be dead? I don't know. All this stuff. It is. I found it's very pulpy. It's very over the top. But this is what I wished, and I know I'm going to offend you guys when I say this, but this is what I wished 24 was going to be.
Ooh,
I did not care for that series.
That was exactly the show that came to mind when I watched this movie.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Oh, Jeff.
Yeah. Which I watched the first episode of Bodyguard, and I found it to be extremely silly.
It's very 24-esque.
Yeah, it's extremely 24-esque, where you have this tortured protagonist who has family problems, who is trying to stop, what is likely going to be a very big threat to national security. Mm-hmm. But I just found it so over the top. I found it to be not only is this guy does he have family problems, but he's also an extremely angry drunk, and yet also extremely competent, and it just layers on all these cliches of these kind of shows in a way that I thought was hard to take seriously, but
You've only seen the first episode, right, Dave?
I've only seen episode 1.
Yeah.
That's right.
I would. It's entirely possible the show is not for you.
Yeah.
I would urge you to watch episode 2.
Okay.
Just watch episode 2.
I think you'd really enjoy it because we've also talked about Homeland. I think Homeland was always a slightly more, it was a slightly more mature version of what was going on in 24. And this show is definitely pulpier than Homeland, but it feels like a mix between that and 24 in a way.
How many episodes are you in, Devendra?
I've seen 2 at this point.
I will say it's definitely... If the second episode doesn't grab you, it probably won't ever. But I think this is like 24 with balls. And I don't mean that in a sexist way.
Did you ever watch Homeland, Jeff?
I did. I watched the first 3 seasons of Homeland.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are good. Those are good seasons. Those are pretty good seasons, I'd say. Yeah.
So I definitely agree. Like there are cliches all over the place here. It feels like the show should have existed a decade ago, when everybody was trying to chase 24. But for I think for what it is now, it's a pretty well-made version of these things. The one thing I will point out, it does seem like so many of these shows, particularly Islamophobic. I highly recommended Jack Ryan. And I think that did a better job of trying to convey the idea of, Islamic terror cells and things like that today with a more nuanced and sympathetic tone, I'd say. I don't know. At least the first episode of this feels super cheesy.
It feels pretty not nuanced. That's how I describe it. Watching the first episode.
I don't think that's a invalid criticism. It is a very diverse cast, which is nice, but that is not inaccurate. The show is very little about that, though. It turns out it starts there and it goes into much, I think, more interesting places, and also really, in the way that 24 never used to. I think it really respects the intelligence of its audience. I know you're laughing at that from the first episode, but the first episode is kind of a red herring. Like the entire show isn't about any of that. It's about this other thing, and that other thing I think is denser. Again, I'm the first to say it's very pulpy. It's very much it watches like you're reading a pulp novel,
like a novel you'd buy at the airport or something.
Yeah, but I think it is a smart pulp novel, and I think a well-made pulp novel, and a dense one that respects its audience's intelligence. Like it's not. I don't think it's as goofy as the first episode may lead you to believe, and I think the second episode, I think you'll be impressed, Dave, but I could be wrong.
All right, I'll check it out the second episode and then decide from there. That's Bodyguard. It's on Netflix right now. Jeff, anything else you've been watching?
Well, I wanted to update everybody. I finished American Vandal season 1, so you can call off the hounds. I finished watching it. I loved the show. I loved it.
So good.
I loved it. And this is a show that I thoroughly misjudged when I first approached it. It is exceptional. It's kind of impossible how good it is. I can't believe it. But it also ends exactly as it should. It is one of those unlikely things in art where the ending is exactly as you would want it to be. It's just like so beautiful and smart, and has a wonderful payoffs in all kinds of ways. It's amazing. It's an amazing show with amazing cast. I immediately leaped into season 2, and I love the fact that season 2 is quote unquote by the same documentarians. Like they carries over those characters. I thought that was brilliant, and
I like the Netflix tie-in there.
Yes, like they acknowledge that they got picked up by Netflix. That's great.
Also, if you look at the opening credits, you'll see that there are like the cinematographer Ming is a character from the first season of the show.
It's so great.
Yeah.
And I also like that the second season is really tackling the one aspect of those kinds of shows that the first season didn't, which is the sort of false confession thing. But I have to admit, I'm not as hooked into the second season. I kind of rushed through the first season because I just loved every episode and was intrigued by the mystery of it all. The second season, I'm not as in love with the cast of characters and the situation, so I'm moving much slower through it. I find myself distracted. I don't know if you guys finished the second season.
Yeah. I did. I loved it.
We finished second season. Yeah.
Yeah. The opening episodes, the second season, like the situation the thing that happens is pretty glorious. It is one of those things I don't think I'll be able to forget. Just the way they staged it, like how gross it is.
Yeah.
I think it
watched
really
it
did
during
raise it
lunch, and it was a mistake.
Jeff, it's my turn to ask you. How many episodes into season 2 are you?
I believe I'm on episode 3. So I like I said, I'm going much slower, and I'm sort of getting distracted. So maybe I should power through.
Have you been introduced to the character DeMarcus Tillman yet?
That doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, yeah. I mean, in my opinion, DeMarcus Tillman, who's played by an actor named Melvin Gregg, that is one of the finest comedic performances of the year.
Okay.
And
no, DeMarcus, is he?
He's the basketball player.
No, I have not gotten to that.
So I would definitely stick through, because that character, what that character's arc is this season is really, really compelling. So definitely,
Awesome.
So it's I'll watch episode 2 Bodyguard. You stick it through until you get to know DeMarcus Tillman.
Deal. Sounds good.
We'll go from there. So that's glad you're enjoying it, Jeff. Glad you're recognizing the glory. Unfortunately, Netflix will not be airing season 3 of American Vandal, but the show is currently looking for a new home, and I hope it finds it. So
I hope so too. I think this is an exquisite piece of a parody, and it like couldn't be better. It knows what it's doing, so confident and so perfect. It's great.
That's American Vandal season 2. And also season 2, really digging the Errol Morris style recreations, reenactments, right? Like they did not do that in season 1.
Did they ever acknowledge that? Because I'd love there to be a moment where the filmmakers talk about staging a poop explosion scene. You know, like do they ever acknowledge that in the
They never talked about it, but I did think it was interesting that they're pushing themselves stylistically, like not just the fake filmmakers in the show, but like the actual filmmaker Tony Ascenda, I think, is the director. Right. He's pushing himself stylistically in the second season as well, so I really appreciate that. Anyway, American Vandal season 2, check it out; it's awesome.
Well, speaking of poop explosion, guys, our sponsor. No, it didn't work.
Wow.
That didn't work.
Wow.
I was going for the win on the Potty Awards.
That's pretty bad.
That's not good? Okay. Hi, sleeping. Can we talk about it? Sleeping is glorious. I don't get much of it. I'm assuming Devendra is learning just how precious sleep is with his newborn. Luckily, we all got Casper mattresses. Our sponsor, Casper, they are there to make your sleep better. They're a sleep brand that makes expertly designed products to help you get your best rest one night at a time. What does that mean? Well, you spend a third of your life sleeping, it should probably be comfortable. Casper's here to make it comfortable, make it affordable, get you a new mattress. If you're just sticking with the same old mattress for year after year after year after year after year, you're probably achy. You're probably not feeling good. Casper mattress, they are built with supportive memory foams for quality sleep surfaces. They have the right amount of sink and bounce. They have a variety of mattresses, the classic, the wave, and the essential, giving you different price points, giving you different features for all the different kinds of sleep you might want. And they have affordable prices because they cut out the middleman. They sell directly to you over the internet. They use people like me to get the word out. They're not your average big box mattress store. This is a way, honestly, to get better sleep, to feel better when you wake up. And guess what? They deliver them right to your door, and they let you sleep on them for 100 nights before you have to make up your mind. You don't have to worry about getting the wrong thing or having it wrong. If you don't like your Casper mattress, they'll come to your house. They'll pick it up. They'll take it away, give you your money back. It's pretty great. You can be sure of your mattress. You can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free sleep on it trial. You get $50 off towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/filmcast and using filmcast at checkout. That's casper.com/filmcast and promo code filmcast for $50 towards select mattresses. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, folks, it has been a while since we've done a Slash Film Court, so let's do one today. And then the music will come in right there. The Slash Film Court is the fairly irregular segment whereby we adjudicate a movie-related dilemma. You can always email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com to submit your movie dilemma. Please let us know where you're from when you do that. This email today comes in from Matt, and this email had layers to it, right? This Slash Film Court issue had layers, so like you had to peel it back. It's like an onion. Matt writes in, at my local cinema, there is a particularly notorious employee who is the definition of a stickler for the rules. He's the kind of guy that will watch you enter a completely deserted cinema to purchase tickets to a matinee session, and then, once you decide to enter the cinema, will sprint like a wild cheetah to cut you off at the entrance and check on your tickets. He also may be the sort of...
That's entrapment!
He also may be some sort of mythical being, as he has worked there for at least 5 years and still looks like he's about 16. Last week, a friend of mine told me about how they'd gone to a session of Overlord and during the pre-film advertising had been startled when this particular employee emerged from out of the blue and demanded to check their IDs. My friend is in his 20s and sporting a beard, so refused to comply. After all, he was already ID'd at the counter. From the sound of things, the employee gave up and brushed it off. Then the other day, another of my friends told me she had gone to see Bohemian Rhapsody and was in a completely empty cinema. That is, until this particular employee saunters in, not to work. He's come in on his day off to see the film. The employee kept to himself, taking a seat at the back of the room. This was until my friend's companion proceeded to put his foot up on the seat in front of him and was promptly told off by the employee, who apparently made a big show of telling him how he worked at the cinema. Later on, during the film, my friend covertly checked her phone. Shameful, I know. At the sight of this, the aforementioned maniac employee wandered down, started swearing at her, and demanded she put it away. He then proceeded to sit in the seat behind them for the rest of the film. Now, obviously, swearing at her and sitting behind them was borderline abusive and downright creepy at best. I was gobsmacked. She said nothing to the staff who were actually working that day. However, the story does raise a few questions I'd be interested in hearing your opinions on. 1. Should staff be allowed to ask for ID once you've been let into the cinema? 2. Is it okay to put your feet up if the cinema's empty? 3. If there's only one person in the cinema who is seated far from you, is there a case for checking your phone as covertly as you can? And 4, most pressing, do cinema staff actually have any authority over you if they are not there in a working capacity? We'd love to hear what you think. Thanks again. I think you guys do an excellent job of the show. Cheers, Matt. Okay, so that's the email from Matt. That's the Slash Film Court dilemma today. So many layers here. Why don't we tackle these one by one? Okay. Number 1, should staff be allowed to ask for ID once you've been let into the cinema? What do you guys think?
Is that even a thing?
I have never heard of that happening before in my whole life.
That's because we're full-grown adults.
No, but even in high school,
it was like once you're ID'd at the desk, like I just can't imagine someone barging in there and asking for ID once you've been seated.
Well, let me say a more global response. We'll get into the weeds here in a second, but I want to say in high school I worked at a movie theater.
You were this guy, weren't you?
Well, there was a guy I knew there. Let's call him Bleff.
Yeah.
Let's call him Bleff. Just to, because his name was Bleff. Bleff Blanata, let's say he took his job a little more seriously than he should have. First job, well, not really first job, but his first actual, going to a place job. He cared about it a lot and probably was more of a stickler for things than he should have been.
Yeah.
I don't think Bleff ever went this far. But
spoiler, this email was written to us from 30 years ago.
But also, that really overestimating how old I am, and I'm offended. I'm offended.
Yeah,
really. The thing about a character like this that I have known in my life is that there's a feeling of ownership about the place, right? Because they come there every day, they care. These are the kind of employees that you want. These are the people that actually care about what they're doing. Is he going too far? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he's
maybe
going
not in the customer service capacity. You know?
Yeah.
But I would rather have this kind of Bleff-like character than somebody who just, I don't care. Not my job. I'm not worried about it. Hey, can you?
Jeff, can I tell you? Let me tell you what the alternative is. Okay. So there is a theater in Seattle. It used to be called Sundance Cinema. It was then acquired by AMC, so it is now the AMC Seattle 10. I'm lighting up AMC Seattle 10 right now on the podcast. Right. I used to really enjoy going to Sundance Cinema, which is now AMC Seattle 10, and the food used to be decent. The service used to be fine. The food is now terrible. Like somehow the food was made much worse after AMC.
You
acquired
don't
them.
like microwaved
chicken fingers? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or
That is
chingers.
every
Chingers,
single-
as Richard calls them.
Yeah, everything.
problem
That's
is-
every single AMC, basically.
The problem is
you
chinger
ordered
sounds offensive.
chingers.
Fingers is much better.
The chinger sounds offensive. Okay, so my
I don't
colleague.
understand why you don't like these chingers, sir.
It's not chicken. It's definitely not chicken.
So my friend went there. My friend went there recently to go see Star Is Born, right? And the showing is at like 7:15, right? 7:30 rolls around. 7:35 rolls around. They start looking. He and his friends start looking at each other. They're like, "Hey, what time is this movie supposed to start?" And so one of them goes out into the lobby and like talks to one of them and is like, "Hey, is Star Is Born playing at 7:15?" And the guy's like, "Oh shit!" Like, and then he like, as though like he had not realized that the movie was supposed to be playing, so he like quickly runs up to go play it, and then there was like
Action is happening.
He was too busy microwaving all the chingers.
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel like they just don't really care right now.
I told you that long story, and people have to go back and find the episode because I'm not going to retell it. But I told you that long story about paying for the Dolby Cinema and the thing being in the wrong format and tiny on the screen, and going out and complaining and then being like, I don't know, that's just how they sent it to us. And I'm like, that is not how they sent it to you.
You don't want that. You'd much rather someone be too invested, right?
Right. That's my point. That's
we're
exactly
on the same page.
I guess.
We're on the
I
same
think
page.
there are bad sides to both things. And honestly, like if I were just on an overall level, if all these things happened to me with one employee, I definitely would have started asking for the manager and complaining about this person because it's kind of insane. I think the last bit is definitely abusive.
Okay. So let's talk about this. Should staff be allowed to ask for ID once you've been led to the cinema? I think we all agree no, you shouldn't be allowed to.
Why not? Absolutely should. If it's a multiplex and they're standing in front of the door on the rated R movie and two kids walk in.
Listen. If they got through the ticket,
if
seller,
they get through the ticket window,
that's
you know
it.
What I'm saying?
I'm not going to be the narc on that kid.
Yeah,
No.
like if you got through the ticket window, it's like, hey, you're probably okay.
And this isn't a law or anything. This is just like a suggestion.
It's completely voluntary enforcement, right? So is the ID stuff.
I would love them to voluntarily enforce it more. That's all I'm saying.
You're saying you would be 100% okay if someone came into a theater that you were already seated at and was like, "Please show me your ID. I don't believe you're over."
No, I don't. I'm not saying it said into the cinema, not into the. Into the
Jeff just wants to cut out the riffraff. I get it.
I'm saying at the door. Like if you were let into the multiplex, but at the door they ask for your ID, I'm fine with that. Coming in and like
completely acceptable. But this guy is saying the pre-film advertising had been started when this particular employee emerged and demanded to check. Like they're already seated in a theater, right?
Fair enough. Yeah, you're right. That is a bridge too far.
Okay, that's a bridge too far. So should staff be allowed to ask for ID? No. The Slashfilm court rules, no. Question 2, is it okay to put your feet up if the cinema's empty? Let me tell you a story. I went to go see Girl in Spider's Web, right, recently. And every time I go into a men's room at a theater, I cannot help but think of Paulie Walnut's character in The Sopranos, who once gave an extended monologue about tying your shoelaces, right? And why like he washes his hands so much is because I tied my shoelace and I had to wash my hands. Have you ever been inside a men's? Have you ever seen the floor of a men's room? It's like a fucking sewer. That's what he said. And I was standing at the urinal at Girl in Spider's Web and realized like
never look down.
The ground is just completely soaked with God knows what liquids. Right?
Yeah.
So, I think we're all fans of the campground theory of cinemas, which is like you should leave them in better condition than when you went in. So, under that logic, no, do not put your feet up in the fucking cinema because you have no idea what's what's on those feet.
Just as a general courtesy, there is that. Also, let me tell you a story. I went to see a movie here at the Court Street Theater in Brooklyn, which is kind of notorious for being particularly shitty. But I was just sitting in like a decent seat. It was pretty empty. And I was leaning back a little. And all of a sudden, there is a foot or a shoe on my head, like a slight kick to my head. And this old guy behind me was in that like the first row of the second level. So you have like those bars in front, and he's just kind of reclining and kicking out there. But he kicked out so far, he hit me in the head. I'm like, dude, that's all I can say. Like, what are you doing? And he apologized and like went back to watching the movie. I just moved over a couple seats, but you don't need to put your feet on the seats. I will say the one time where it may be okay is those bars, but even now, like I'm careful if I do that because people could be sitting next to the bars.
Right?
Or something.
Yeah.
That is the only downside to stadium seating. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it really is.
All right, so I think we're all agreed. Don't put up your feet if it's not about whether you're bothering other people. It's also just about keeping the
disgusting.
cinema in good condition. It's disgusting.
Yeah, and I don't want to adjudicate outside our jurisdiction, but I also say this is exactly the reason that it's barbaric to keep your feet on keep your shoes on in the house.
Yes.
People that don't take their shoes off in the house, I will never understand. But again, outside our jurisdiction.
This is like watching TV for me growing up was always strange because people would be like on their beds.
On
with
their
sneakers.
beds. That's the thing I don't
What the
understand.
hell
On
is
their
this?
bed.
Yeah.
That I don't get. I mean, inside the house, I agree that's disgusting, and of course, most Asian people say you got to take your shoes off in the house. So, we've lived that our whole life. But shoes on the bed is just like incomprehensible to me. Okay, guys, we're going off the rails here. Okay, question 3: if there is only one other person in the cinema who is seated far from you, is there a case for checking your phone as covertly as you can? Here's my response to that. Of course, you should never check your phone in a cinema. However, the big question that's unanswered in this is where you are seated in relation to each other. If you are in front of them, then no, you should not check your phone because you're disrupting their experience. If you are in the back and they're like seated 8 rows in front of you, I don't think they're going to care.
I would go farther, Dave. I believe, and I know this might ruffle some feathers.
You're ruffling, Doherty. Yep.
I believe there is a way to check your phone covertly in a movie theater. I believe.
Wow.
Now, hear me out. I'm not advocating for a response on your phone, but if you're just looking to see what that message is, there's a way to turn and tuck and in the side of your body.
If you have like a jacket or if you have like a hoodie and you can hide it, yes, sure. If you don't, that feels like a cinema crime. I don't know.
Yeah,
I agree.
Jeff.
I agree. There are many ways to not do that correctly, but there is a way to do it polite and have it not affect anyone but you, and you can just quickly see what that is, and if it's an emergency from your wife or child, I think it's okay.
I was ready to call for you to be disbarred from the Slash Film Court, but I think you're describing an edge case which I will say that on an extremely rare occasion, I may have done exactly what you're describing, which is checked my device, but in a way that is extremely considerate to other people. Like, not only am I thinking like, okay, I gotta wrap, my jacket around my phone. I gotta make sure no light is escaping from my jacket cavity.
It can be done. It can be done.
It can be
I
done.
am not in any way advocating for response. Response is over the line. You leave the theater if you need to make a response. But if you just want to see what that message is, there's a way it can be done.
All right. Okay. I think that's fair enough. And then finally, question 4, most pressing: do cinema staff actually have any authority over you if they are not there in a working capacity? I love this question because it's like it's talking about cinema employees as though they're cops. If there's a plainclothes cop that arrests
very
you,
little authority over you in general.
If I ask you if you're a cinema employee, you have to tell me.
And you have to show the badge and read your rights. Read them. Yeah.
No, cinema staff do not actually. I mean, like, define authority. Like, they can probably talk to their manager and eject you, but they can't make you do anything. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing legal about what they're doing other than enforcing their own private property rights.
And even ejecting you is like a whole process because they have to like probably get security or something too. Like it's a thing. It's a whole thing.
So
they
the
can't
answer
touch
to
you.
the answer to this question is no. They do not actually have any authority over you. Whether even if they are there in a working capacity, they do not have any authority over you. You should respect them, but they can't make you do anything.
Well,
like
except
show
for
you
this
the right
guy. This guy sounds like a dick, so maybe don't respect him. I don't know.
Perhaps, but we'd much rather someone be overinvested than not. And I should agree. Like, I don't think this person Matt who wrote in is asking the right questions, to be honest. I mean, the question I would have asked is it okay for this person to then sit directly behind you and make sure you're not using your phone? I don't think that's a reasonable thing to do. Like, I personally, I try to remove myself from situations where there's going to be conflict. I went to go see the movie Widows last week, and there were these annoying Chinese people talking behind me the entire film. And rather than confront them, possibly in Chinese, I decided to just remove myself from the situation. I came with two friends. I said to both my friends, I whispered to them, I'm getting up and moving to another seat.
And those Chinese people turned to you and shushed you.
rather than like confront them. That was my step that I took.
Dave, that is why you are not qualified to be a licensed cinema employee. Because
no badge for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, we've learned a lot about my qualifications tonight. So,
but in this case, by the way, like real world advice, like talk to the manager. Like if you go there enough and you see this person there enough, you probably know who's actually in charge. And you don't want to get people fired, but you could be like, hey, dude, chill out. Like tell your guy to relax. But
Devindra, what you're doing, you're setting up Matt to go. Here's what's going to happen to Matt. He's going to ask this dude, hey, can I speak to your manager, please? And that dude's going to say you're talking to him right now.
Doesn't have, well, could be. Or you could go another time when the dude's out there. If you're really that, non-confrontational.
If you're that
you could go another time.
Yeah.
You can, if it's a chain, you can lobby a complaint in other ways, usually online. There are a lot of ways to do this. I'm somebody, I worked in customer service for a very, very long time. And that's really important to me. So this guy needs to be kicked off or something, like, or at least needs to be admonished for what he's doing.
I don't think he needs to be fired or anything, but I think he needs to understand that there are limits to bluff-like behavior that people can stomach. So,
I once, Bluff once was in a situation where this woman called Bluff a young pup to Bluff's manager. She's like, you need to call off your young pup.
What did you do?
I don't even remember. I there was something that was problematic, and she's like, I want to talk to your manager. And I was like, oh yeah, you definitely need to talk to my manager because he's going to have my back. And then my manager came out and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. It's fine. Here's some free tickets for the theater. I was like, what the?
That's their job. Their job is to give out free tickets and apologize, basically. But yeah.
All right. Well, that's our response to every one of Matt's questions. Thank you, Matt, and to all the other people who've been writing into the Slash Film Court. You can always reach us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Write to us with your dilemma, and we will try to adjudicate it here on the podcast.
You know what we do when we do the Slash Film Court is we try to see the situation as clearly as possible. Right, guys?
That's correct, Jeff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which brings me to our sponsor, Simple Contacts. Talking about seeing clearly. Am I right, guys?
You're right, Jeff. You're right.
I want to tell you about Simple Contacts. No BS. Honestly, literally last week, I made a new order on Simple Contacts for my contacts. I wear contacts, and it is the only place I will go to order my contacts because it's easy. I mean, simple is right in the title. It is simple. It's so easy to order them. They come. The best thing about Simple Contacts, I'm telling you, it's incredible. They come so fast. Maybe it has to do with my geography. Who knows? I would be surprised if that has everything to do with it. They arrived so fast in the mail, and it's so simple. You can do if you're just renewing your prescription, you can get a Simple Contacts vision test. They have an app where it takes less than 5 minutes. And you save all this time. You don't have to go into an appointment at some place and pay hundreds of dollars. It's so fast. You actually get a doctor to review your prescription. It's a simple contacts. It's a simple process. You literally do it on your phone. You do the eye test, and it's confirmed. It's awesome. It is not a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam, though. But the vision test that Simple Contacts has is only $20. You compare that with an appointment, which without insurance could cost up to $200. And the prices on contact lenses are unbeatable. This is why I use Simple Contacts. I bought my contacts, and I get the very, very expensive. Unfortunately, it's very frustrating, actually. I have like a very expensive kind of contact that I get. I get the daily disposable. So I literally throw away a contact every single day, which is a bit of a bummer. But that's why I use Simple Contacts, because their prices are unbeatable. Standard shipping is free. And best of all, they are offering a promotion to our listeners. Get $20 off your contacts at simplecontacts.com/filmcast20 or enter code filmcast20 at checkout. The 20 is there to remind you it's $20 off. That's promo code filmcast20 or simplecontacts.com/filmcast20 for $20 off your contacts.
Alrighty, let's get to our review of Overlord. Okay. I got to turn off the heat, which just kicked on. Give me a second.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I don't even know if we need to do spoilers for this, but
Yeah.
let's see. I do want to talk about the last line of the film, but we can cross that bridge or get there.
I mean, I kind of wish I didn't know it had anything to do with the occult when I went into it. I think that'd be cool, but I did.
That was from the trailer for Overlord, the new film by... Whoa.
Sorry, I dropped something. You can start that again. Sorry.
Excuse me.
Nice.
Yeah. That was from the trailer for Overlord, the new film by Julius Avery. It was written by Mark L. Smith and Billy Ray. Billy Ray, I know that's one of your favorite screenwriters, right, Devendra?
Yeah. And director, honestly, between like Shattered Glass and Breach. Yeah.
Very talented dude. This is a bad robot production with J.J. Abrams. There's actually some confusion, I think, over whether this was going to be a Cloverfield movie at one point.
I mean, it might as well be. Anything can be a Cloverfield movie if you wish hard enough, guys.
I actually am curious if this movie would have performed better at the box office if it was called Cloverfield,
right.
Overlord.
It's a terrible, bland title.
Yeah.
Overlord's not great. Yeah.
It means nothing. Yeah.
Right.
So
it should have been called Wolfenstein. How about that?
That wouldn't that have been incredible? Like that would anyway. The plot summary from IMDb is a little squad of American soldiers finds horror behind enemy lines on the eve of D-Day. What is with this IMDb? A little squad? Probably a small squad would anyway. So that's what the movie's about. Jeff, what did you think of Overlord?
Well, Dave, I think my opinion can best be summed up in the form of a limerick.
Can it be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ready? It's not an art film like Koyaanisqatsi, but Wyatt Russell got his father's moxie. In 2018, there's a joy just in seeing any movie that's about punching Nazis.
All right.
Oh, man, that's pretty good, Jeff.
It's pretty good.
That's pretty good, I gotta say. Like, I was not looking forward to that, but Moxie and what was the other? Nazi, and then what was the other rhyme?
Koyaanisqatsi.
I mean, that's just...
Wow.
You worked hard on that, right, Jeff?
Yeah,
you worked hard.
I did. I did. And maybe you should start looking forward to them, Dave, because they're not going anywhere.
So, I'm sorry, I was so amazed by Koyaanisqatsi Nazi rhyme that I didn't really understand what you thought about the movie.
I had a blast with this movie.
Yeah.
It is just fun. It's a violent, over-the-top, gory, just good time. It's loud, it's bombastic, but it doesn't insult your intelligence. There's some clunky dialogue. There are some characters that are less memorable than others, but overall, it's fun. It's got some really satisfying set pieces. It's got a really cool premise. Like Devendra said, I'm a fan of the Wolfenstein video games, and this is the best Wolfenstein movie I could have ever imagined. It's the fun of those Wolfenstein games. It's the fun, not really the latest Wolfenstein game. That one's like set in the 60s and kind of a departure and its own weirdness.
It's like steampunk. The new one's like steampunk, like alternate. Yeah.
Well, it's more like 60s. It's psychedelic and crazy. But the traditional, the more the older World War II Wolfenstein movies. I mean, this is that fun, that like occult.
Just imagine if like Wyatt Russell's character at the end was like he just revealed his last name is Blazkowicz.
That would be amazing, right? That would be amazing. Could easily have happened. They would have literally had to change nothing.
Nothing at all. Just a title and licensing. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it really isn't more complicated than that. It's just, I think, fun. It's those kinds of movies that I enjoyed growing up that were sort of visceral and disposable popcorn films, but like had an edge. And this movie, it hits all that fun stuff. It's not gonna, it's not gonna make you think overly hard, but it's got some great satisfying moments, and I just had a great time with it.
Divin, your hardware, your thoughts on Overlord?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Like it's a fun ride of a film. And the thing is, like, it's a tight genre movie, and it's so simple in terms of what it's trying to do, and the enjoyment mainly comes from punching Nazis, and that's kind of what we all want to see today. I was surprised. I didn't realize Billy Ray had like co-wrote this movie, and he also has a story credit. I feel like Billy Ray, a guy who's written a lot of like smart intellectual movies, just wanted to punch some Nazis on camera, and he made it happen. Power to him. I think that the set pieces are fantastic. This movie looks good. I like most of the actors. Jovan Adepo is a tremendous actor. He was in The Leftovers.
Yeah,
and Fences.
Leftovers. That's where I remember him from. Yeah.
So yeah, really nice seeing him, taking on a more action-oriented role. And also Wyatt Russell, I think, fully channeling Kurt Russell at this point, like just full on doing it.
This is The Thing, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's funny too, like, he is the mysterious character with like a damaged past, but you know at the beginning of the movie exactly who that character is, and of course Kurt Russell's son is playing that character. So dug all that. The secondary characters not so much, except for the girl they work with, played by Matilda Olivier, I believe, and she is fantastic. Like she is tough and cool and really interesting, and adds some depth to this movie as well. I wish maybe we got a little more of this world in terms of what's happening or what the overall plan is with these Nazis and their experiments. But what we get is really nice and tight, and it kind of hints at maybe, following up eventually, and I wouldn't mind seeing that.
So I think I agree. There's like specific scenes we can talk about how we like them during the spoilers, but overall, I thought this movie was a lot of fun, and I was actually surprised at how much I liked it. I thought I would probably find it to be pretty enjoyable, but I left the theater being like, wow, I really, really enjoyed watching this movie. I think like you guys have pointed out, the casting is really great. Julius Avery does a great job directing, and there are some really amazing sequences in here, and it kind of just understands how to deliver on the genre thrills. It does have a few problems. I actually think that Wyatt Russell is kind of miscast. That character feels like he should have been 10 years older, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a bad performance. I just don't think he really looks the part of what.
How could you find an older version of Wyatt Russell?
I know. It's impossible. Impossible to do. It also
like a one generation removed. How do you get it?
No.
The movie also suffers from a severe scarcity of Bokeem Woodbine, in my opinion.
Yes,
he's in the movie, but he's not in it for that long, and I wish there was more of him in the movie. But what I really was surprised by is that I actually gave a crap about these characters and what happened to them. That's really like by the end. I mean. It's like with Saving Private Ryan, right? Like all these characters have one characteristic, basically, and it's the movie's job to illustrate that characteristic, make it vivid, and also make you care about them. And I think the movie actually did that. And so by the end, I was really invested in hoping, so and so makes it out of this alive.
This is the Saving Private Ryan of Nazi zombie movies.
That's right. That's right.
It's also exactly how I thought I was going to feel about the new Predator movie. Like this movie, I mean, they're very different movies, but this movie delivers the exact feeling I wanted from that movie, because I thought Shane Black doing it was going to be, so fun. This movie is what that should have been.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting too, because Julius Avery, this is his second movie basically, whereas Shane Black is seasoned for decades. So I think probably part of it has to do with the fact that this is like a bad robot production, and I don't know, like my hunch, which is completely not backed up by anything, is that the director in this case probably had a little bit more freedom than Shane Black had in the Predator's case.
Right.
But I have no backup for that whatsoever. That's just kind of what I would surmise based on what the final product. Like this movie feels like much more of a cohesive whole than the Predator movie did.
But just in terms of like the budget and the fact that this is original and not a huge franchise or something,
Yeah,
there's more room to just be your own thing.
This is that rare movie that is wholly original, not based on an IP, and it is a hybrid of a war movie and a horror thriller, sci-fi thriller thing. And that's just very, very. We'll probably never see. I don't think we've ever seen a movie like that in the history of the Slashfilmcast, and we likely never will. And so, I had a great time with this movie, and I hope that it gets rediscovered when it comes out on home video. Julius Avery is not going anywhere. He has been tapped to direct the new Flash Gordon movie at Fox. Any of you guys looking forward to Flash Gordon?
Well, I am now.
Really.
Were you a fan of Flash Gordon, the original, Jeff Canada?
Oh, as a kid, yeah, I loved that movie.
Yeah.
Yes, because there weren't superhero movies when I was a kid. There was like that and Superman the movie, and that was all I had. I'm old. But also, it's not a character I have any particular affection for. But having seen Overlord, I'm now looking forward to it. I think it could be cool, and it's a character that has a little enough baggage that you could actually have some freedom with it and do something cool.
Right. Like, hopefully, there's not going to be waves of internet people being like, "Why did you make Flash Gordon blonde or whatever or redhead or whatever the hell you
bet there are going to be complaints. You bet there are.
I mean, yeah, whatever.
All right, let's talk about some Overlord spoilers starting right now. So I want to mention a few sequences that I thought were particularly well done. First of all, I have to say, I kind of admire the fact that this movie took 1 hour before it even introduced the premise of the movie.
Well, that's why I kind of wish that they hadn't. I mean, I understand you have to market what this movie is marketed as, but if I had actually just thought this was a World War II movie, and then all of a sudden it sort of pulls a From Dusk Till Dawn on you, that would have been rad. I think that would have been really cool.
I'm sure, like knowing J.J. Abrams and kind of like what his whole penchant is towards surprising and mystery boxes and stuff. They really let the cat out of the bag with all the advertising and the marketing and the trailers. For
they really
movie.
did.
So
it
seems like they had no faith that people would want to see this movie if they didn't know it was actually going to be a genre movie. And honestly, I would probably have very little interest in seeing a war movie from Bad Robot if I didn't know something else was going on there.
Yeah. I think it would be hard to market it as just a war movie. It would be tough. It'd be tough. Because typically in a war movie there is like a central conflict. There is like a big battle or something like that, and that doesn't happen in this film. So,
but I tell you what, that first sequence in the airplane coming in and getting out is, I mean, you're not waiting around for the occult stuff to happen for this movie to get good. It is already balls to the wall and awesome. I don't know if they could have cobbled something together out of that stuff.
Let me ask you this question, Jeff Canada, longtime video game fan and host of video game podcast DLC. Dalton from Florida emailed into slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Quote, I love video games. I'm currently 30 plus hours into Red Dead Redemption 2. Me too, Dalton. This film felt like a game. Opening scene, jumping from a damaged plane, scenes where Boyce or Ford had to be quiet and stealth walk around, Boyce exploring the lab, even moral actions like Boyce jumping into Ford beating the Nazi up. All that was missing was a press X to intervene on the screen. It went from action scene to action scene with no plot to ride on, just next action scene. For me, the film felt so light on anything other than the premise and felt so serious that there was never really any fun to be had. Perhaps I'm the only one who felt this way, but honestly, watching it in Dolby Atmos aside, I could have just stayed home and played another 2 hours of Red Dead Redemption 2. At least then I would have been able to press X. End quote.
Huh. That took a turn. I thought he was pointing that out as a positive. But,
actually, I did not feel Dalton is right, but I didn't think that was a downside.
No.
Like when he was
saying that was one of the good things of the movie. For him.
Like when he was exploring the lab, I thought that sequence was amazing when he's going through the lab and like around every corner is a new horror. Like you don't know what it is, but you know it's going to be freaking awful.
Dude. Sack
There's
of dude. That's
person who's talking
then,
who's just a spinal column. Like
lady head.
That was great.
So cool.
Pretty good. But speaking of Dolby Atmos, like I also saw it on that screen, and it works really well. This is a movie where every single gunshot just has like a nice thump to it, and that's definitely helped by like the transducers in those seats. But the sound design overall is just fantastic because this is, it's not a big budget movie. It's pretty small. They crash, they land in the forest, they go to a village, and then there's this lab. That's the entire movie, right? So I think they make the best of what they have.
I actually watched this in Limax, and it was a pretty fun movie to watch in that format because it was chest rumbling audio and stuff.
Yeah.
But to his point, it is, it's very in vogue to say that there are no good video game movies, but I think there are a number of excellent video game movies. They just don't happen to be tied to actual video game IP.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those. I think this movie is clearly influenced by video games and video game culture. And I think you can point to movies like Hardcore Henry as another that I think is like clearly a video game movie. It just doesn't happen to be one that you recognize.
Yeah. And it wasn't a downside for me either. Like, it sounds like, according to Dalton, like, it just felt like because it was so video gamey, there was nothing connecting much in the movie. But I thought it was pretty tight in terms of what they needed to do and like what connected the movie together. They have this mission, they land, they're pursuing the mission, they meet the girl, and they try to protect the girl, and then the kid gets stolen. Like, it all kind of connects in a way, and it focuses on the overall mission. It's not super complex, and I appreciate that sometimes.
I gotta say that the final sequence when the protagonist is escaping from the building was incredible. That's one of those is incredible. It's one of those shots
one
that
take,
in one shot, and it's like everything's exploding around him. It's one of those one takes that sneaks up on you. It takes you a second to realize what is happening, and when you realize it, what is happening is so spectacular that. It really took my breath away. I really love that shot. I mean,
I could almost hear the direction too, like for that scene. It's like, be your Tom Cruise. This is your Tom Cruise run.
Yeah,
it's actually quite a performance in that moment because just stringing together that sequence of running one direction. Oh God, what's that around that corner? Oh God, an explosion. Oh, that is not easy to do. And I bought it. I bought that was all happening in sequence like that. It's a spectacular moment.
To the video game point, though, it does remind me of like Uncharted, the video game, when you're like running towards the camera and something exploding is happening behind you. A very common trope in those things. But guys, I think we really need to mention the last line of this film, which I don't recall exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of, after this whole ordeal that these characters have been through, they are being folded right back into service. And the main character, I think, says something along the lines of, we still have a job to do, or like we have to finish the job, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was a call to arms. I felt like it was a, hey, the Nazis have not yet been defeated. Don't think the Nazis have been defeated. You must go defeat the Nazis now.
Are you reading? You're reading a lot into that.
I'm reading a lot into it. Yeah. I'm reading.
There's a lot of the real
it.
world bleeding into this movie, and I definitely felt as the Nazis, were appearing and doing Nazi shitty things. My fists were balling up. Like, this movie viscerally wants to make you destroy them in a way. But I was more excited by the potential for where this movie could go, and like giving us an actual a movie that has a bigger scope and gives us like the Wolfenstein thing. Maybe the sequel could be a Wolfenstein movie, and this was actually the prequel all along, like Unbreakable and Split style. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do think that a sequel where they literally have to go kill a cult mutant Hitler would be loads of fun. So sign me up for that.
Yeah. By the way, can you guys believe that we are 2 months away from seeing Glass, the M. Night Shyamalan film?
I cannot.
I have. It has been so difficult to avoid those trailers. They seem to be bombarding me all the time.
Yeah.
I've been avoiding them too, Jeff. But I am really psyched for that movie. So
me too. So excited.
It should be pretty awesome, and we'll be reviewing it in just a couple months. So that'll be fun. Any closing thoughts on Overlord? I think we all had a great time with this movie, and hope you people have a chance to check it out.
I think there are a couple of just real quick, a couple other shout outs and sequence. I think the transforming sequence when they first see their friend who was being killed turn
that was good.
Was exceptionally well done. Like that moment, like he gets up and then headbutts the post and breaks it in two. It's like, whoa, that was rad. And then I thought sometimes that digital makeup can not work well, but I thought half a face with our main villain. And I also thought, the movie takes a long time with setting up how evil he is before he becomes over the top, CG evil. Mm-hmm. And that sequence where he, is tormenting the French woman and attempting to, rape her is, I thought was really tense and well executed. It's a good move. It's a good sequence.
Yeah, a lot of good sequences everywhere. The sequence with the kid and the ball. Like, there's that sequence when they hear something upstairs, and then like you have their guns are pointed at the thing, and there's just really really a lot of stuff to admire throughout. So, I kind of wish the rules had been a little bit better established for what those creatures could do. Like, is it like you shoot them in the head and they die, but then like later on they shoot one in the head and it doesn't, what?
You really have to destroy the head.
You just have to like annihilate these things, just completely. So, but yeah, really fun movie. Great genre exercise. That's Overlord. That's our review of it. And that's the Slashfilmcast for today. Stay tuned to hear what we'll be discussing next week. But in the meantime, find more episodes at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. Our theme song comes from AdamWarrock.com. And our Slash Film Court music comes from SimonMHarris.com. Devindra Hardawar, where can people find more of your work on the internet this week?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Devindra, and I write about tech at Engadget.com. I'm on paternity leave, but I'll be back there soon.
Jefferson Kanata.
I am at Jeff Kanata, which is spelled with 2 N's and 1 T on Twitter. And I do have the aforementioned video game podcast. I welcome you to give it a shot. It's called DLC. You can find it at 5by5.tv/DLC.
Find all my stuff at davechen.net and get emails from me at davechen.net/letters. I'm also trying to make YouTube videos pretty regularly at youtube.com/davechensky. That's Dave Chen, SKY. Next week, we'll be discussing Widows, new Steve McQueen movie. What happens when an Academy Award-winning director makes a heist film? We'll find out and talk about it here on the Slashfilmcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you later.